So traps in a D&D setting are kind of inherently unfair. They essentially only exist within the GM's mind. The GM can place them wherever the heck they want, whenever they want, and you can't really argue against it as a player because they're trap, and by nature they're supposed to be an unknown element. Some traps are more fair than others, and some traps are less fair. When I design a trap, it's usually very unfair. So I've used this trap at least twice in my various campaigns, and only with my friends because it's inherently hilarious to me and blatantly unfair. Well, come to think of it, it's actually really not that unfair because the art of a good trap is to telegraph it as much as possible. It's a lot like foreshadowing. If you do it properly, then the players can't complain later. This particular trap that I set up is telegraphed pretty early, and it's pretty obvious, but it's also extremely brutal if they fail to recognize it. The only way this particular trap works is, one, you put it into a setting where it makes sense to have it, and two, they have sufficient amount of time to get out of it. So this particular trap is a magical trap. Those get pretty common at higher levels, and they're a little bit easier to survive once the party has all the tools available. You can put it in an earlier setting, but if you put it in a dungeon where it doesn't make sense to have it, it's not going to go over well. I'll explain that in a second. So this particular trap involves playing with the player's greed. I designed this trap originally for a Thieves Guild setting. The backstory behind this particular Thieves Guild is that way in its past, there was a particularly well-known and famous legendary thief who amassed a huge amount of gold. Now, this thief, for whatever reason, decided that he was not going to give his Thieves Guild that amount of gold. Instead, he was going to put it inside of a dungeon of his own making. This dungeon would be run and operated by the Thieves Guild, but would be very, very difficult to get through. The adventurers would approach the guild. The guild would offer them an opportunity to go and get the gold, usually either for a small fee or in the more likely scenario, the adventuring party hands over all of their worldly possessions in the eventual case of their death. This makes sense story-wise, so that way the Thieves Guild still gets paid one way or another if the party dies, and they can pay to maintain the upkeep. Now, on the off chance that the party does win and collect all that gold, I believe the Thieves Guild gets half in the original adventure I wrote, but it really doesn't particularly matter. All you need to do is you need to make this scenario sound believable enough to the party, but you still need to telegraph it in a way that makes sense. Now, the party has it in their head that they can maintain a huge amount of gold. You've got to make it believable enough so that when they encounter this trap, there is a chance that they might fall for it. So, this trap only really works if you put it near the beginning of the dungeon. When the party walks into this particular room, they are greeted with a huge pile of gold pieces, something around 10,000 or maybe just 1,000, like a large sum of money, but it's just out in the open. It's just there, just big pile of gold. And so the party should be suspicious that a large pile of gold is readily available to them this early in the dungeon. It's got to be within the first couple rooms. Otherwise, it's not telegraphed well enough. If the party were to inspect these coins look like regular gold pieces, but if they tried to identify it any further, they would notice that these gold pieces do not have any form of denomination on them. There's no, currency or ruler or any identifying markings in any nation. Instead, on the gold piece is the insignia of some, fire or fireball, yeah, you could say. Now, you probably already know where I'm going with this, but these coins are not actually coins. Instead, they're an illusion with the delayed fireball spell written on it. Now, if you did not know, delayed fireball is exactly what it sounds like. It is a fireball that goes off after a certain amount of time. When the party encounters a coin, and if they touch it, roll 1d6 die. The result of 1 to 6 means that the coin will blow up in that many minutes. Now, you don't want to make each individual coin like a massive fireball. You want to make each individual coin survivable. So I would give each individual coin 1d6 damage in die roll. Now, if a 1d6 fireball blows up in your face, most characters will survive that. That's kind of like a Bugs Bunny Looney Tunes, like, gun, like, explosion to the face. Most characters will survive this. However, they're going to be picking up 1,000 to 10,000 of these coins. So there's a real good chance that if they fall for this, they want to get blown up. Now, the time when I did it, the players picked up the coins, they looked at it, and that's all. They just did like a quick surveillance check, and lo and behold, the time I did it, they didn't get a real good check. They just picked up and was like, oh, there's some coins, and it's got a weird insignia on it. Oh well, chunk, put it in the bag. So yeah, the story isn't very long, much like this particular adventure wasn't. The guys picked up the coins, they stuffed it in the bag, they walked outside the room. They all, and it was kind of funny. The adventure continued for a little while longer, but then someone piped up, hey, isn't it weird that we found all this money really early in the... So yeah, I've only ran this trap once or twice, and the first time I ran it, one of the priests, I believe, had a ring of 9 lives, and we did like a BS roll, and you know, the ring wasn't destroyed and he still had like a finger or something, and so the ring of 9 lives brought him back to life, and the priest was a high enough level to cast resurrection so that they all came back. And yeah, that's probably the worst trap I ever made. It's not a great trap. I tried to telegraph it enough, but you know, sometimes players be dumb. They didn't cast any kind of magic detection. They just kind of looked it over and just assumed that they got a free 1,000 gold pieces from a thieves guild who's been known to kill people. So, yeah, that was the first time. The second time I used that trap, however, was actually one of the best campaigns I ever did. I'll tell that story to you next time in the time that I GM'd 12 players at once. Until then, be sure to check out our other series, check out our Pokemon Tabletop series, check out our other D&D stories, and hit that like button, tap dance on that bell, and ding dong that like. Wait, hold on. That's not right.